Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Preseason 8 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today I'll be covering support Leona, the Radiant Dawn.
Don't stare directly at me for too long.
Alright, so let's start this guide by looking at Leona's pros and her cons. So Leona's a very tanky champion that brings a lot of crowd control. Her ultimate can slow and stun, her Q's a stun, and her E has a short duration root. With all this crowd control, she then has some pretty good engage and disengage. She can use her abilities either to dive onto the enemy backline or to peel for her carries, depending on which one she needs. She has some very strong lane presence because the enemy has to be very afraid of going anywhere near a Leona because if she grabs them, she can follow up with a lot of damage from her AD carry. Now because of Leona's passive, she even has some high early game damage herself. As long as she's autoing in between some of her abilities, she will be applying her passive's damage and therefore be doing a lot of damage even herself. Now Leona, however, has some pretty low mobility. Therefore, you have to be very careful if you do jump into a fight because you're not really going to be able to get out of it. Leona also has no built-in sustain, so therefore she's very vulnerable to poke damage. You'll therefore have to go for low bursty trades and not those long drawn out ones where the enemy can poke you over and over again. Try to burst them down. Now as previously mentioned, she doesn't really have mobility to run out of a fight if she does engage, so she does really rely on her team following up. You have to be very careful and make sure your team is on the same page as you because sometimes you may jump in and they won't really understand why and you'll kind of just die on your own. For your runes you have a couple different options, but my favorite is going Resolve and Domination, grabbing Aftershock as my keystone. This will make you gain some defensives whenever you immobilize an enemy champion and also make you deal a burst around you as well. Tankiness and burst damage is everything a Leona player wants. I then go for Font of Life so my allies heal themselves whenever they hit a marked enemy, and then get Conditioning so I gain armor and magic resist. I finally finish up the Resolve side by getting second wind so I do get some health back whenever I take damage. Then in the Domination side I like to get Cheap Shot so I deal bonus true damage whenever I mobilize a champion, and then Zombie Ward so when I kill a ward I get one of my own. There are many different options you can go for on the Resolve and Domination side, but these are my favorites. For your first summoner spell you'll want to grab Flash. Leona is a fairly immobile champion and it will give you a reliable escape and an extra way to jump onto an enemy champion. It's easily the best summoner spell, so make sure you pick it up. As for the second summoner spell, Ignite is a great option. Pick this summoner if you're wanting to be very aggressive in the bottom lane and want some added kill pressure. Take it if you're with a really strong early game AD carry. Another good option for your second summoner spell is Exhaust. You'll want to pick this one up if you're playing for the late game or you're against some really high late game damage champions like a Yasuo or a Zed. Your passive ability is Sunlight, which adds a nice chunk of damage onto your auto attacks whenever you follow an ability. Leona's abilities each mark enemies hit with Sunlight for 1.5 seconds. Any damage dealt by allied champions will consume Sunlight, dealing between 25 and 144 based on level bonus magic damage. So this is a fairly strong passive because as long as you're using an auto attack after every spell, you will be doing a lot of damage with it. Of course though, if you are in the bot lane this may not be necessary because you will have an AD carry auto attacking in between all of your spells. This passive is a big part of the reason Leona actually does a pretty significant damage in the bot lane. When you're going for an all-in, make sure you start your W ability, then use your E to jump onto them and your Q to stun them, and as long as there is auto attacks in between, it will do a lot of damage. Your Q ability is Shield of Daybreak, which is a very important part of your kit because it will stun the target on your next basic attack. When activated, Leona's next basic attack has 175 range, deals bonus magic damage, and stuns her target for 1 second. Shield of Daybreak resets Leona's auto attack timer. So this is a fairly strong ability because it is a 1 second stun and does some pretty decent damage and also resets your auto attack timer. Therefore you'll want to auto attack and then use your Q to reset your auto attack timer and auto attack again. This is a really easy way to destroy a ward instantly if somebody drops one in front of you. That's basically how you'll be using this ability though. Use it when you are on top of a target if you want to stun them so the rest of your team can follow up, or use it to destroy wards if somebody drops one in front of you. Use it for the auto attack reset. Your W ability is Eclipse, which gives you some nice added tankiness and also does some damage in an AoE. When activated, Leona charges herself with Sunlight, gaining bonus armor and bonus magic resistance for 3 seconds. The Sunlight then erupts at the end of the duration, dealing magic damage to all nearby enemies and retaining Eclipse's bonus resistances for an additional 3 seconds if she damages an enemy. So this here is one of your main abilities because it gives you a ton of tankiness and also deals some pretty decent damage in an AoE. Since it takes 3 seconds to erupt, you want to cast this ability before you jump on the enemy champion with your E ability so it explodes when you get there. Of course, you can also use the stun from your Q ability to hold them in place as well. Since this does the most damage of all of your abilities and it gives you a lot of tankiness, this is the ability that I like to max first on Leona. Use it whenever you're engaging onto an enemy. Your E ability is Zenith Blade, which will allow you to dash to a target and root them for a short duration as well. When activated, Leona projects a solar image of her sword, dealing magic damage to all enemies it passes through. If she damages an enemy champion, she will dash to the last one struck and root them for 0.5 seconds. So this yet again is another really strong ability because this is your way to get onto an enemy champion. As long as you can land it on the enemy, it will do damage and of course pull you to the target and also root them for 0.5 seconds. Now you can also use this to help push the lane because it will do damage to all the minions it passes through as well and also apply your sunlight. So if you do end up in a situation where you need to shove the minion wave really quickly with your AD carry, make sure you're using it in that scenario as well. The main use, however, will be to jump onto those squishy targets so you can follow up with the rest of your kit and delete them. Your ultimate ability is Solar Flare, which does a nice chunk of damage in an AoE and can also slow and even stun your target. When activated, Leona calls down a beam of solar energy to the target location after a 0.625 second delay, dealing magic damage to all enemies it hits and slowing them by 80% for 1.5 seconds. Enemies hit by the flare's center are instead stunned for the same duration. Casting Solar Flare charges Leona's next basic attacks with Incandescence, granting them 225 range and empowering them to deal bonus magic damage. So this here is a fairly strong ultimate because if used properly you can stun targets from a very long range and it'll make it really easy to follow up onto them. Against really clumped up teams you will be able to stun multiple targets or at least slow them, which is going to be pretty devastating. It does some pretty decent damage on its own, but that Incandescence makes your auto attacks hit even harder as well, and Leona will be very bursty. Try to make it so the center lands on the enemy AD carry so you can jump onto them with the rest of your abilities and easily kill them. For your skill order, you first want to put a point to your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then you'll want to focus on maxing your W ability first because it gives you a lot of added tankiness and also does some nice burst damage in an AoE. Then you want to focus on maxing your Q ability second because it is your really strong stunning ability. You'll also want to make sure you take it at level 1 because it's by far your best ability at level 1. Then focus on your E ability last, but make sure you take a point in it early on at level 2 so you can actually jump onto your targets. Without it, you don't really have a strong engage unless you are level 6, so make sure you take it early on at level 2. For your main all-in combo, you first start by dropping your ultimate on the enemy champion and then activate your W, jump onto them with your E, and then use your Q when you get there to stun them. Against champions that aren't that mobile, you can always use your W after your E as well if you don't think they'll be able to move out of it before it blows up. Now let's look at some of your AD carry synergies, and first up is Ezreal. Ezreal works great with Leona because she can hold people in place, and of course Ezreal will have a lot easier time landing his abilities, which will do a lot of damage. They'll also both be able to combine their ultimates to do a big chunk of damage in an AoE to multiple targets if they are clumped up. Play rather aggressively so Ezreal can arcane shift forward and land the rest of his abilities. For the next synergy, I've got Misfortune. She's going to work great with Misfortune because as soon as she lands an ultimate or engages into an enemy champion, Misfortune can activate her ultimate and destroy that target. Now, although she gets some decent mobility from her W, she doesn't actually have a built-in escape like Ezreal's Arcane Shift, so she makes good use out of all of your peeling as well. In teamfights, try to hold people in place for her ultimate and keep her safe as much as possible. And for the next synergy, I've got Twitch. Just like with Misfortune, Leona is going to be able to hold people in place for Twitch's ultimate, which is going to allow him to destroy an entire enemy team if they are clumped up. Just like Misfortune, he doesn't have a built-in escape ability either, so you may need to provide him some of that solid peeling. It's very similar to playing with a Misfortune, so you have to do pretty much the exact same things. And last but not least, I've got Vayne. If you're able to stun somebody near a wall, Vayne will easily be able to tumble and get a condemn of her own into the wall, and you're going to chain CC people forever. Since you both do a ton of damage as long as Vayne can get off 3 auto attacks, you're going to have a lot of kill pressure. She is rather weak early on though, so make sure you're using your abilities to peel for her and keep her safe. During the lane phase, you'll want to start playing aggressively when you're level 3 and you have your full kit. Start by activating your Eclipse and then jump onto the enemy with your Zenith Blade. This will make it so when you arrive at the enemy, your Eclipse will blow up, doing a nice chunk of damage. As soon as you get to the enemy, stun them with your Shield of Daybreak and auto attack them to trigger your Sunlight as long as your AD carry hasn't already. Once you're level 6, you can also add your Solar Flare at the beginning of the combo to stun the enemy from range and then follow up with that combo. Also, please make sure you keep your lane warded at all times to watch for ganks coming from the enemy. In teamfights, you'll first have to decide if you're going to be diving into the enemy backline or tanking on the front lines and helping peel for your allies. If you have champions that are strong at diving onto the enemy backline, like a Talon for instance, then I usually like to use my Solar Flare to stun the enemies so they can easily delete them. If the enemy team has strong assassins, however, then you may want to use it defensively to help peel for your carries. Use your Zenith Blade and Shield of Daybreak to peel the enemy carries off of yours. Also, if you do have time before the team fight, try and sweep out wards with your oracles as well so the enemy has reduced vision and they don't have eyes on a lot of your carries. Now let's look at some hard matchups, and first up is Braum. Braum is a very tanky champion that's able to peel people off of his AD carry, so if you get on top of them, Braum can usually push him off. He of course also has his ability Unbreakable, so if you do get on top of his AD carry, he will be able to jump to them, use his Unbreakable, and stop any of the damage from your own AD carry. Try to bait out the ability and then engage onto his AD carry afterwards. Next up would be Janna. Janna's pretty solid against you because she will be able to use her kit to push people off either herself or her AD carry. That means if you do engage, usually you're getting pushed off. Her shielding ability is also really strong in trade, so try to wait for it to fall off and then engage afterwards. Also, if she is using her Q ability aggressively, try to engage after it misses because she won't have that great peeling. For the last hard matchup here, I've got Taric. Now Taric is going to be a hard matchup because his E ability is great at peeling people off of himself and his AD carry, and his ultimate can completely save either himself or his allies. Your engage combo can be completely negated by a well-timed Taric ultimate. He's also finally got a heal in his Q ability, so if you get in long drawn out trades, he will win those with that healing. Alright, now let's finish this off with the item build, which starts with a Relic Shield, Health Potion, and a Warding Totem. This is going to give you some extra tankiness right at the start and some really solid lane sustain, and of course Execute, which gives you some extra gold. For your core build, you want to go for Face of the Mountain, Ruby Sightstone, and a Locket. This is going to give you some reusable wards, which is great for providing vision for your team and yourself of course, and give you 2 shielding items. One of these is AoE and it'll give your team a lot of extra tankiness. For your boot options, you have Boots of Mobility if you plan to spend a lot of time roaming and influencing the game that way, Merc Treads against high AP and CC heavy teams, and Ninja Tabis against high AD teams. For your item pool, you first have the Knight's Vow. This is a really solid item since you get to attach yourself to an ally, which will give you both some increased tankiness and give yourself some nice sustain. If you then want some help engaging into the enemy team, you could get a Righteous Glory. The movement speed activation is incredibly solid and it gives you some really nice tankiness at the same time. If you then want to provide some nice extra sustain, you can always go for Redemption. This item will give your team a really nice heal, and it's great if you plan to siege against the enemy team. Then for the next item I have Zeke's Convergence. This will make a really solid storm whenever you use your ultimate and can provide a lot of extra utility in a team fight. Then if you want to be a little bit more selfish, you could always get the Randuins. This is a fantastic way to add armor and it's really solid against high crit champions like a Yasuo. That activation slow is also really solid at keeping people in an area or helping peel. Then you have another option in the Frozen Heart. This is a really solid item if you need that extra cooldown reduction or to reduce the attack speed of the enemy team. Then if you instead needed some extra magic resist, you could always go for an item like the Spirit Visage. For my example full build, however, I take that core build, get some Boots of Mobility and then a Knight's Vow and a Redemption. This will make you a very tanky champion and allow you to attach yourself to an ally, making both of you stronger, and it'll give you some really nice shielding that is going to be great in team fights. Of course, you're also going to give your team a little bit of extra sustain with the Redemption. And that's all I've got for Support Leona in Season 8. If you guys enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe, and visit my video description below. I have a link to all my social medias, and I do also have a Discord server, so those are a couple you should definitely check out. But other than that, thank you guys so much for watching the video. I really do appreciate it, so take it easy, have a good day, and peace.